Good day, everyone. My name is Dread. Welcome to Mist Valley Entertainment News. Today, we're going to take a look, probably a little more in-depth look, at what is going on with Xbox right now, because people have a lot of questions, and people have a lot of concerns. So we're going to react to a video by the ultimate authority on many things video gaming. Well, not the ultimate authority, but someone who is very knowledgeable and very reasoned and is a great sleuth for uncovering things and then bringing them up to light and looking at them and talking about them. We're talking about legendary drops, so we're going to react to his video, Why Everyone is Mad at Xbox. Let's get into it.
Xbox becoming a third-party publisher. I have never heard of a more divisive topic for the console war and console fandoms. But today what I want to do is I want to talk about this charged topic, to say the least, and try to disseminate some of the information that we've been given, but more or less try to look at this from a level-headed approach. I'm going to talk about some of the different conversations around it, and we'll see if there's any truth to what many people believe is the end of Xbox.
A lot of rumors so far, a lot of rumors, and we don't yet know, at least I don't yet know, whether all these rumors that are floating around are true or not. I think it's the internet. Who really knows?
Give this whole thing a little bit of background. I'm going to read an article from Forbes written by Paul Tossi, who says things are escalating quickly in the Xbox rumor mill, which are now less rumors and more like official policy that Microsoft has not yet figured out how to announce as the situation quickly spins away from them. Well, this all started with a report and data mined confirmation that Hi-Fi Rush was coming to PlayStation and Switch. It has now grown to the point where an apparent massive shift in Xbox's entire gaming philosophy is on the way. Reports are that it may release its biggest game of the generation so far, Starfield, on PS5 sometime in the coming year via Xbox Era. And past that, they may be doing the same with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, the just previewed actioner from Machine Games. This is something that I've seen coming for a long time. The minute that Xbox got into subscription services and really started focusing a lot of their efforts and a lot of their resources into XPlay, their streaming service where you can stream games straight to other devices like tablets and phones, I already knew that they were going to try to shift away from the console market entirely.
And this is why I listen to Legendary Drops. The man he's intelligent. He looks at things and he turns them around. He looks behind him. He looks under him. He looks over top of them. He spins them around and takes a look at it in 3D. And he just figures out more than just the surface stuff. And usually before a lot of other people do. Not everybody, but a lot. By the way, the original video that we're covering here, reacting to, will be linked down below, as well as links to all my other channels and my Discord, etc., etc. If you're new here, don't forget, love to have you subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, and you can check out my Discord and join up there if you just want to have somewhere where you can pop in and see all of my videos listed there, as well as me pontificating and talking about all manner of other things. And a lot of the people who are members of my Discord are content creators themselves, so you might be able to check out some of those and find yourself some new content creators that you enjoy as well. So welcome if you're new here, and if you're returning, welcome as well. Thank you so much.
It's the future that many of these companies are kind of looking forward to, at least some of them. Xbox for sure, because they've even shown off in the past. They used a commercial with one of the game awards where Ninja was playing Fortnite on a television, and that's something that they're looking forward to.
Now, I talked a little bit about this, definitely not in the kind of detail and with a substance, and Legendary Drops is going to talk about it, but I did talk about how things are changing, technology's changing, and because selling a physical console is a money-losing proposition for these companies, how they were obviously going to be getting away from that somehow. And that they, of course, they have plans to get away from that. We don't know their plans necessarily, but they've probably been in the works for a while, and they're probably slowly being implemented. So getting away from selling consoles for Xbox is not super surprising to me. It may be to a lot of you who weren't aware this was coming, but, technology changes, and And it's always about the almighty buck. So if you're not making money by selling a console device, why would you keep selling it? Why not come up with another way of doing things, right? That benefits you more. Not you, the consumer, necessarily, but, you know, Microsoft and Sony and all these companies, right?
Because keep in mind, Microsoft is a software company, not a hardware company. And I think a lot of people really forget about the issues that Xbox went through back in the day when they were first making the Xbox 360. They discovered just how expensive it was to be able to make a lot of different units at a good cost with high quality. That's one of the reasons why we had all the red rings of death and things like that. There's all these different levels of quality assurance and different protocols that they have to go through for manufacturing, and manufacturing is tough, especially for a company that was just learning to do it. And not only is it tough, it's incredibly expensive. And I think far too many times people forget that, for the most part, these console makers aren't making a ton of money on the hardware. All that money is coming from the software. It's the game sales after the fact that you've purchased one of the consoles. But they want to attract you to get those consoles, and that's the reason why they have exclusives. So I understand why many people are looking at what Xbox is doing and saying, why are you doing this? Nobody's going to want to buy an Xbox. And they know that. Tossy continues with, I'll focus on Starfield as a representative for everything else, probably because it's the single biggest Xbox exclusive of the generation. Likely higher profile than even future titles.
Higher profile than other titles, sure. I'll give it that. It's definitely probably the highest profile Xbox exclusive title, although it's not really exclusive because it's on PC. So I really have a trouble with that word exclusive. It just means you're excluding it from other consoles. But anyways, I digress. Yes, highest profile, but it's definitely not the biggest, like, I don't know if it's the biggest selling or not. I don't know. It's certainly not the biggest in customer satisfaction. But whatever. They throw these hyperbole words around and they enjoy them, so whatever.
Titles like Perfect Dark and Fable. And the biggest until Elder Scrolls 6, I imagine.
Ooh.
But Xbox giving it over to PlayStation would be like The Last of Us, God of War, or Spider-Man being passed across the aisle, which would clearly never happen. So why is Xbox doing this? This seems to have linked out because there's some sort of internal strife within Xbox about this plan, and there are cases for and against. The main idea is that Xbox has lost the console war for 2 generations now, and they're going to just stop pretending otherwise.
Whoa. So what do you... When this article says the main idea is that Xbox has lost the console over 2 generations now, and they're going to just stop pretending otherwise, the main idea of what? Who is the main idea? Is that the leaker's main idea? Is that Xbox's main idea? Is that the consumer's main idea? Is that the person who wrote the article's main idea? That they're not very clear on this? Maybe because it's just a flipped part of this whole thing? But whose main idea? Whose main idea is that Xbox has lost the console war for 2 generations? And whose main idea is that the Xbox is going to even stop pretending that they haven't lost for 2 generations? Again, I'm not involved in the console wars, but I'm aware that people who come here are. They have clear favorites of one console over another. So I'm trying to be fair here and ask these questions. Because Xbox people don't want to hear that they've lost the console over 2 generations. Some of them maybe agree with it. Some of them maybe won't. I don't know if it's true. I don't know that much about consoles. I don't own one. I own a PC. I don't need a console. My opinion, anyways. So I'm just curious, whose main idea is that? Because they throw this sentence out in this article without giving anything to anchor it to. It's just floating out there like it's true, and you don't really know where it's actually coming from. So,
They have repeatedly said their future is in services and bringing Xbox games to as many people as possible. On the player's side, Xbox owners still get day one Game Pass launches, and PlayStation players now get the same games eventually. Win-win. Now, Paul touches on this, but I'm seeing nobody else talk about it, and this is probably the biggest deal and the biggest reason as to why Xbox is doing this in the first place. They have lost the console generation twice, not only with the Xbox One, but now with the Series X and Series S. And people also need to realize that that kind of loss back-to-back is unheard of.
By the way, does anybody know where the numbers, where I can actually find, an article that has the numbers that tells me for the last 2 generations? I guess they're meaning generations of Xbox. I'm guessing not actual humanity generations. That they've lost the console wars, because I'd like to actually see the numbers on that. I'm too lazy to go look it up myself, but if any of you can shoot me a link to an article or a website that shows the breakdown of PlayStation and Xbox and shows that there's more sales of games and or consoles on one side than the other, I'd just be interested in taking a look. Again, I don't really care about the console wars, but I would be interested in the facts behind these statements.
To be honest, I'm actually kind of surprised that they still stuck in with it after the fallout of the Xbox One, because that's normally where Sega would have took their step down, just like they did with the Dreamcast. And this is all something that's coming from the fact that Xbox has only really released subpar titles for a long time. Many of their favorite franchises, the things that made them stand out, don't attract audiences anymore. And while that's a part to do with their quality of those games, it's also because those games just don't appeal to audiences today. There's different types of experiences and different types of games that people want to play, and a lot of those games failed to adapt to those more modern audiences and at least those modern tastes, especially because Xbox was known for being a shooter console.
So I'm gonna have to take this all at face value with a grain of salt. I can't comment on it again because my knowledge of what games are on what console and how they did is extremely minimal because I don't play consoles.
However, when Gears of War and Halo don't evolve with the times, well, it makes it really difficult for them to be a springboard for that console to continue to succeed. And this comes into a lot of different issues when it comes to them, because it's not only that they were releasing subpar games. We could also talk about some of the more recent releases, because I think Starfield also didn't hit the mark. Redfall didn't hit the mark.
Yeah.
Some of the games that they're looking at in their future library don't look like they're going to be hitting the mark either. And then you add on top of that that they've been having a huge push into Game Pass, where they have been hemorrhaging money, because there's no way that you're charging so little for monthly subscription services and access to all of these games that rightfully would be sold at $70 a piece now,
and making any money.
And you're charging people only like $10 or $15 a month, depending on whatever their service plans are.
Yeah.
Financially, it doesn't work.
You have to bleed money doing that. You have to be bleeding money doing that. So the question again is, why? I wonder if a big corporation like that does stuff like putting out Game Pass and then throwing big games like Starfield onto Game Pass and not trying to take the $70 from people instead. Is this in some way, just trying to theorize here, is this in some way maybe Microsoft saying, look, we want to get Xbox away from physical consoles. It's a lot easier to do that if we show a loss for a while. Does a company like that do that? What do you think? Is that a strategy to help get them to where they're going by saying, look, we're losing money doing it this way, so now we have to change to whatever they come up with that is a better service for them to make money at? Curious as to what you think.
Especially with how much money is being invested in these titles to begin with. And we know how much money is being invested in these titles because we've seen in the documents that were leaked during their Activision Blizzard acquisition trials, where we saw that Sony was spending $250 million on specific games of theirs. Well, we know that's probably pretty similar to what other studios are spending on making their games and marketing their games, etc. So if you're investing that much money into your games, how are you getting it out of the subscription service? Especially if you're making it your main way of trying to deliver games. That's the way that you're It's the
crazy.
vehicle that
That's
you're trying
absolutely
to
crazy.
onboard all of these new players onto your platform. And while it
That's like playing a game of Russian roulette with only yourself playing. You're eventually going to die. I mean, that is not a good business plan at all. So then the question becomes, why does a business do that? And I think it had to be, I don't think they're that stupid a businessman. I think there was a reason for doing this. There is a reason for short-term showing large losses, short-term showing the inability to make money doing the things the way they did so that they can do the about face and do what they actually want to do. That's my thought. Let me know what you think.
did work in some way, it wasn't making enough money. And you're not going to be able to do that unless you reach a certain subscriber count. But sorry, players are just not ready to hand over the keys and hand over ownership of all of their games. They'd rather hold on to them. Paul continues with, except that's not how it's being received more widely. The concept raises so many questions, it's hard to know where to start. For starters, it would make the premise of buying an Xbox for Microsoft's promised big lineup of exclusives relatively pointless, and players who have already bought into that ecosystem based on Microsoft's stated plans about big future games are understandably upset as a result. Why buy an Xbox for Xbox games when you can buy a PlayStation and now get PlayStation and Xbox games?
FOMO, fear of missing out. People need to play a video game. They need to play it as soon as they possibly can. They do not want to wait. That's why. I think FOMO is a disease right now amongst people. That they will rush out to get something because it's the in thing to do. You need to have this. You need to play it. You need to be bragging about how early you played this game. You need to be bragging online about how early you beat this game. Blah, 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 blah. It's redonkulous. It's redonkulous, people. Take a chill pill. Again, Horizon Zero Dawn. I don't have a console. When it came out, it was a console exclusive. It was not on PC. I waited a year till I could play that game. And it was a game I really wanted to play. It looked really cool. But I still waited the year. I didn't rush out to buy a console so I could play it right away. Why would I? I'm not a baby. I have the ability to check my emotions and say, I don't need whatever right this second. I mean, what do I need right this second? Air to breathe? Food and water? I don't need them right this second. You know? Blood pumping through my system? Those are the things I need right this second. But to play a game that's just come out, I need to play it on the first day or the first week or the first month, or, you know, to be able, I don't know. I'm not like that. I know many of you say, well, we are like that. I'm just telling you, I'm not. And there's a lot of people who aren't. And I think it's kind of a sickness, and it's a consumer driven sickness where they will market the shit out of things to make you, you know, spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing to make you rush out to buy something you didn't need to rush out and buy. You didn't need to buy it at all. You didn't need to play it at all, but you certainly didn't need to rush out and buy it right off the bat. It's a literal sickness.
And in terms of Microsoft's goals for Game Pass, how does this further that? Presumably, something like Starfield is just going to be offered on sale for $70 on PlayStation. So this does nothing to increase Game Pass subscriptions, only to give less reasons to buy an Xbox in the first place. It also signals that perhaps Game Pass is not quite as healthy as Microsoft lets on. And to justify the enormous development costs of a game like Starfield or Indiana Jones, it turns out you do need to sell it for $70 to some amount of people outside of the Xbox/Game Pass ecosystem.
Yep.
This specifically makes Starfield feel like a failure that needs extra juice from a direct rival.
It always was
or
a failure.
A lack of confidence Indiana Jones will pull its weight without a wider audience. And this more or less hits on exactly what I was talking about before, about Xbox releasing subpar releases. Starfield was meant to be the beacon of hope. It was meant to be the one thing that was going to drive people to, one, buy an Xbox, and two, have more faith in the Xbox ecosystem, Game Pass, just Xbox in general.
An embarrassment.
However, it didn't. It fell short.
Well
And
short.
some of that blame lies with Xbox because they were the ones that weren't properly monitoring Bethesda and keeping Todd and co. in line,
Sure.
and making sure that whatever experience was released by them was going to be top notch. It was going to be something that people loved and something people want to play. And that's me not saying that nobody liked it, but on average, people didn't.
Yeah.
There was a lot of issues, a ton of issues with that game, and many of those issues are actually coming back to poor decisions that Xbox has made. And this is something that I've been preaching for a long time, and that Xbox Series S has ruined this generation of gaming for all gamers, not just Xbox gamers, all gamers.
All right.
We've been receiving less quality products because many of these studios that release third-party titles on all consoles have to make a Xbox Series S version of whatever they're making. And it's incredibly difficult for many of these studios to do. Baldur's Gate 3 was one of those games, and it took them quite a while to even be able to release it, and even to get that game to fit and work properly on the Xbox Series S, well, it required them to remove couch co-op entirely.
So is it a smaller console or a console than the Series S, I'm guessing? S for small, I don't know. Is it something that just doesn't run the same? Won't run more powerful, larger games, that kind of thing? Memory issues? I don't really know much about consoles, so I'm just taking a stab at this. Don't know anything about the Series S. You want to fill me in? Feel free.
What does that tell you? This is something that at one point in time I was getting ready to write a video. Actually, I already have a script ready that's called The Downfall of Xbox. I wrote this last year, and I never released it just because I was distracted with other topics I wanted to cover. But one of the things that I realized
life
that Xbox started to do after a while was when they first conceived the Xbox, it was called the Direct Xbox. And the whole premise of them making the console in the first place was because they wanted to make a platform that was easier for game developers to develop games for. They figured if they could streamline it in some way and make their jobs easier, then everybody would get better games as a result, and everybody would want to make games for Xbox. And they were right, because they continued with that philosophy going into the Xbox 360. But that's where that philosophy ended, because in the Xbox One is when they wanted to make it a home entertainment console, and we remember all the memes then. And now, today, their main focus is Xbox Game Pass and becoming a streaming service and a subscription service. They've left behind the idea of making games easier for developers to develop games for them, and instead have only made things more difficult for developers in the long run, which makes us all suffer in the end, because that's a lot of extra hoops for many of these developers to have to jump through to be able to release their games. So
interesting.
Many of the issues that Xbox faces, and they're facing with Game Pass and everything else, are all self-inflicted wounds that have been building up since the Xbox 360. They were on the right track. They just hopped off it, and they never got back on. Paul continues with, this feels like an all-or-nothing situation. There's some idea that this may be applying to big Bethesda-based games like Starfield and Indiana Jones, but not core games like Halo. Oh, but wait. Maybe the Master Chief Collection, and maybe this other game or that game. The point is, players are going to have no faith in knowing what will actually be Xbox Game Pass exclusive going forward if Microsoft is just picking and choosing randomly, or saying one thing and changing their mind later, which is what's happening right now.
By the way, I can envision that all the PlayStation fans are rejoicing over all this news and laughing it up and everything else. Take your victory lap, but do it with honor. Do it with honor, because you may not believe this, but people who own Xbox are people too, and they've got the same feelings and passions you do. And I say be respectful. I'm hoping for respectful. Probably won't happen, but I'm feeling like there's too many people who are involved in the console wars who are just intellectual and mental and emotional babies. They just are. But again, I'm hopeful. I feel bad for people because again they got screwed. And yeah, I mean this happens all the time in the gaming industry. To people get screwed by games, people get screwed by gaming companies, and now we're getting screwed by a whole console. Um, it's tough. It's tough for the industry as a whole.
Now, with this, Xbox essentially becomes a third-party publishing brand that for some reason still makes hardware. But also, they want you to subscribe to Game Pass. But you don't need an Xbox for that. And you also don't need it for exclusive games anymore either. Maybe just early access. Or not. Who knows?
Oh, God.
Microsoft is supposed to be explaining all of this soon. But I don't think there's a way to spin it that makes it sound like a good idea. To me, this feels like the endpoint of failing to cultivate meaningful exclusives compared to rivals and way overplaying their hand when it comes to Game Pass. And if this happens, it may not be the end of Xbox, but it will be the end of some form it's taken for 4 generations now.
Yeah.
Now, there's...
It's fair.
This falls off the rails for me in a couple different places, but I will say this. The people that already invested into Xbox are rightful to feel wronged if this is the direction that Xbox is going to go in, because they specifically invested in Xbox because they wanted to play those specific games.
We still don't know where it's going.
They're still going to be able to play those games, but they invested in it because they thought it was the only place they were going to be able to play those games. Now, knowing that they could have just bought a PlayStation and still had access to those games later, they probably would have made that choice to begin with, but they can't, and not everybody can afford.
Wow, you're telling people that Xbox fans, if they known all this, would have just bought a PlayStation. Legendary, I feel like you're putting your forehead into a furnace doing that. That's dangerous talk with some people. I understand what he's getting at, but that's dangerous talk.
To have multiple consoles or PCs or anything like that.
Yeah, so
now, with that said,
yeah.
The reason why I say this conversation goes off the rails for me is that when it comes to exclusivity, I am an anti-exclusivity Andy. I hate it. I'm sick and tired of not being able to play all of my games in one place, because not only is it more convenient, it's cheaper, and it's my preference. It's the highest quality gaming experience I could possibly have when I get to play games on my PC. And I've loved the fact that Xbox has been releasing all of their games on day one, because it made it where I didn't need to own an Xbox anymore. I could just own a PlayStation or a Nintendo Switch and then a PC, and I get to play all the games that I want to play. I don't need to own 4 consoles, which with my PC included, to be able to play everything I want to play. And I believe...
By the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And do drop into the comments. Leave a like as well, but drop into the comments, because I read all of your comments, and I enjoy at least 50% of them. And the ones that are too over the top get deleted, and if you're extremely over the top, you get reported. So don't be an asshole, but drop in, be respectful of others, and have good conversations. I read all the comments. I respond to as many as possible. Really interacting with all of you and having these conversations. I'm just starting the conversation. I'm relying on all of you to continue it. And I enjoy it. I love it. So let's keep it going. Thank you all so much. Any success this channel is having, and it is having a little bit, certainly goes to all of you, the viewers, and I thank you.
I believe that's where most people want to be. Everybody wants that. Who wouldn't want to be able to play all of their games in one place?
Yeah, that's
everybody
why I got
has
Steam.
Their own specific preferences with their controllers and their setups and everything like that. And again, it's cheaper. So for me, when they say things like, oh man, it's sad to see exclusivity go, what's the point? What's the point? The point is that if we can get away from having all of these systems have exclusive titles, which I know is unrealistic, but in the utopia world that we don't have exclusive titles, that means that these companies, if they're going to stay in hardware, have to compete by hardware rather than try to lock us in with specific experiences that we want to have.
They'll find another way to screw you over, though.
Forcing us to play the games that we want to play because we have to buy their console to play them. Instead, they have to fight each other on who can make the higher quality system for the best price.
That's true.
Now, the sentiment on social media is relatively charged. And looking at TCMF Games writing, I personally hope Xbox doesn't go third party. I don't want a world where PlayStation isn't competing with Xbox. It doesn't benefit us. I know some of you don't like hearing that, but it's how I've seen it and what I've said in the past. Nintendo do their own thing. They don't care about what PlayStation and Xbox do. I'm really curious to see what Xbox leadership say about the meltdown happening right now. And now, while this is relatively level-headed, the problem is that this isn't the kind of competition that we want, and it doesn't necessarily mean that these companies and the competition that they have is...
Anybody else notice the kitty jumping off the washing machine or counter or whatever over here? I always notice when the cat moves around in his videos. Love it.
Really benefited us all to begin with in the first place, especially if we're looking at the quality of games that Xbox has released since the Xbox One era. Many of the games have just failed to hit the mark, like I said earlier, and many of their games are still continuing to do so. Now, largely, personally, I believe that this is just a American style of development issue that we're kind of seeing, where a lot of the more Eastern games are starting to appeal to more audience than, well, Western games are. But with that said, I don't see where this competition has really led to either of these game companies really making better products as a result of their two experiences. The best games that we've had over the last few years have all been third party. While there have been some really good ones that have been released by both Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo in the past, they don't account for most of them.
Interesting.
Not even close.
There's some people would disagree.
Jez Corden of Windows Central and the Xbox 2 podcast writes, 1, alienate fans by making them worry about the future health of the platform and their purchased games. 2, create a meme that Xbox has no exclusive games, pushing wider audiences away. 3, be confused why everyone thinks this is a bad idea. 4, pivot when it's too late. Jez Corden also posted a poll asking, do you feel confident investing in the Xbox ecosystem right now? With 56.1% saying no, and 17.9% saying unsure. Now, what I find relatively odd here is that you're going to have some people that are going to have opinions on this on social media that are inclined to do so, either financially or because of their fan allegiance to whatever console that they align themselves with. And this isn't necessarily a mark against Jez, but he does work for Windows Central, and he does have an Xbox podcast. So people like that are going to be relatively biased when it comes to a decision like this that Microsoft is making. And I think that making the assumption that this is a bad idea really doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of Xbox is just going to sell more games, period. They're just going to appeal to a wider audience. More people are going to have more access to the games that they release, and there really is no downside to that outside of Game Pass or Xbox console sales. However, they haven't been able to figure out anything to make Xboxes sell better. Even when lowering the prices, it didn't matter, and nobody really paid attention to it whatsoever. And the games that they've been using to try to attract people to their console haven't worked either, because many of those games have failed to hit the mark. So you have to do something to make money. Otherwise, the whole thing just goes upside down. So, again...
So you could push your games out now to more people on different consoles and everything else, and more people will purchase them, I'm guessing, and play them, which is good. And then it'll allow you to make money. But there's two things going on. One, those who bought those consoles for the exclusives and pay for Game Pass for the exclusives are now not getting them. How do you make that up to them? How do you make them happy again? Right? And 2, boy, I wish I remembered what 2 was. It's the number after 1 and before 3. There was another one there. Yeah, how does it actually draw any people to Xbox? I don't necessarily think it does. In fact, it really shouldn't at all. It'll just get you better sales numbers. That's it. It's pretty curious. There has to be more to it. There has to be more to it. There has to be. There just has to be.
We're going to get into some of these, but for the most part, you're seeing people start to lean on the side of it's just the fandom side, and that's about it. Another user writes, if Xbox does decide to go the route all the rumors suggest, the thing I don't understand is why now? You've invested $100 billion into your gaming division to turn things around. only to pivot before the majority of them even have a chance to change anything. Why not wait a couple of years and see if your investments change your fortunes or not first? And that's because they have given many of these different companies an opportunity to show them a return on investment. They have spent a ton of money pulling together all of these studios, but many of the studios that they've purchased have not released products that were good enough to be able to draw attention to Xbox in the first place. If we're looking at Bethesda specifically, Starfield didn't hit the mark. Nope. It didn't move sales. It didn't move the numbers. And also on top of that, neither did Redfall in any way, shape, or form. They did have Hi-Fi Rush, but Hi-Fi Rush isn't a console seller, and it isn't something that's going to drive a bunch of people to come play your game on Game Pass. So with that said, if you have all of these companies that you've invested all of this money into, and I would also imagine that after they got Activision Blizzard, they probably realized that Activision Blizzard wasn't making enough money for them to show a big enough return on investment for them to continue to wait any longer before doing something more drastic to start generating more revenue. Thus, why we saw a lot of the layoffs go off.
Yeah,
because they walked in and said, no, this company's wasting too much money. There's a lot of areas where we need to save money, and they're starting to scale back. Another user writes, over 300 votes already. More than 60% of Xbox gamers would leave Xbox if games go everywhere. Go back and rerun the numbers, factoring in an Xbox console ecosystem half the size or less than it is today. I'm leaving Xbox. There's no point in owning an Xbox if the games go to a console that already has more games. This strategy will be the end of the Xbox console.
Well, that's true, but then again, you're still buying those games. If you're buying those games at full price for $70, then Microsoft and Xbox are still winning because they're still making more money than they would otherwise if you'd stayed at Xbox and bought a Game Pass for $10 or $15 a month. So it looks bad, marketing-wise, it looks bad for sure, but it still makes them more money, doesn't it? It gives them time to come up with another strategy if they don't have one already.
Console and Xbox Game Pass. I'm sorry. Running a poll with 300 votes and going, there it is, guys. There it is. Everybody's out. I don't know what to say. Wrap it up. Phil Spencer, you're out the door. Go rerun the numbers. We got 300 votes over here.
It's pretty fucking hilarious stuff.
Oh, man. I don't know what to say. A lot of these different profiles that I see pop up are people that are saying, I'm leaving Xbox, I'm done with Xbox, and I go and I look, and their entire Twitter profile, their entire online persona is Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, Xbox games.
Yeah. So they're angry. Do you think they're actually leaving Xbox?
Everything Xbox. And there is a level of bias and a level of dramatics that are going to come with something like that, because when you have actually made something the avatar of your life, your personality, your purpose, then yeah, chances are you're going to feel relatively hurt when something like this happens, but it's not as dramatic as many of these people make it seem.
That's true.
The director of publishing from Larian Studios writes, people's minds have been absolutely blown by Microsoft's controversial strategy to get more people playing Xbox games by releasing them to a broader range of people.
Look at that statement. Look at how smart he is. People's minds have been absolutely blown, all right, by Microsoft's controversial strategy to get more people playing Xbox games by releasing them to a broader range of people. Like, there's just somebody who's an insider, not an Xbox insider, but a gaming industry insider looking at this and going, they need more people playing their games? Of course that's the way to do it. Like, what are people getting upset at? He's not, I don't think he's saying that there's no reason for anybody to be upset, but he is saying, like, people are like, what? When this is the obvious move by Microsoft. The obvious move.
Let me give you some optimism. The fact that there are so many vocal and active Xbox players means that there's an audience. If there's an audience, there's an opportunity. Your favorite ecosystem isn't going anywhere, but strategies shift with the times to make sure the economics make sense.
And that's what I've been talking about in some of my videos about this lately. I mean, changing priorities. The economy factoring into this as well, obviously. and technology changes as well. So you make a course correction. It's what you do. Hey, we're bleeding money, or we're not making as nearly as much money as we need to be making. We need to course correct. Let's get some funds coming in. Let's get more people excited about our games by showing them to more people and charging the full price for it. This is a twofer. We get more people playing our games and excited about the games we have and we're putting out. Plus, we're getting more money coming in. Yes, that doesn't go and help any of the situation with those who said, but I bought for exclusives, right? I get that. And I'm not poo-hooing them or saying they don't matter, but I'm saying the company's looking at the bigger picture. We need money. We need more money. We have to, I mean, they're basically saying we need more money. I don't know how much money they make, probably an extravagant amount compared to what I make, but they're saying we have to bring more money in. This is how we're going to do it. And again, do they have a longer term strategy than just this? They damn well better. I mean, they're a big multi-billion-dollar corporation with some smart business people. You damn well bet they've got something cooking that's more than just this, okay? What it is, I can't exactly tell you. I'm not their brain level smart, you know. I don't rub shoulders with them at their cocktail parties. But I'm telling you, there's more than just this. And they probably got a 4, 5, 6, 7 year plan going on how to turn things around slowly. But it's going to be a lot of course correction and a lot of changes to get to wherever they're wanting to go. And let's see if it's the right move or not. We won't know. We won't know. We know there's going to be short-term pain. Will there be long-term gain for Xbox? We don't know yet, because we do not see the whole picture. We just don't. We do not see the whole picture. We're reacting to the short-term pain right now. Or if you're a PlayStation fan, you're partying in the streets right now and laughing at everybody. So be it.
In spite of Xbox games being on Game Pass PC and Xbox, they habitually make Steam top sellers at full price. Why wouldn't they want to make money off games, thereby reducing the risk, while at the same time being able to say, well, over here, it's basically free?
Yeah.
And for me, this hits the nail right on the head. Typical Larian W. But a lot of the people that are looking at this are not looking at it from a business perspective. If Xbox makes their games more available, yes, that does eventually mean that they're going to make less money off of the Xbox specific ecosystem, off of the actual hardware itself. However, that doesn't mean that the company makes less money overall, because if people like their games, people are going to be playing their games. And to be honest with you, if they're releasing their games on more platforms, they're going to be a little bit more inclined to make sure that those games are even better than they are, so they can continue to make as much money as they possibly can off of selling those games on various platforms.
Hey, maybe they'll even make Bethesda put out a decent Elder Scrolls 6 instead of a heaping, steaming pile of dog shit. Maybe they'll even change their engine and take some courses on how to make games and customer service courses and all that great stuff that any large, successful AAA company should be able to do, except for Bethesda. So maybe there's a small sliver of hope for Elder Scrolls 6, and maybe this is part of it. We'll see.
And he's absolutely right, because there are games that have done very well on Steam, even though those games were on Xbox Game Pass or on or released on the Xbox. And I'm a really good example of that, even though I realize that, you know, this is kind of an anecdotal, but for the most part, even when games have released on Xbox Game Pass, I just went ahead and bought them on Steam because that's where I'd rather have all my games to play. Even though I realize I would get it cheaper, that doesn't really matter to me because I want to have access to it all the time.
Yeah.
And I want all my games in one place.
Makes total sense. You know what? We're not going to cover the last 9.5 minutes of this. If you want to see the whole video in its entirety, go check out the link down below. I want to thank Legendary Drops for being legendary. I do admire this man. I love his content. And I enjoy reacting to his videos. I can't react to all of his videos because some of them are, it's like university level stuff that he's talking about in gaming, and it just goes so over my head that I can't grasp it. This is a good one, though. It kind of helps bring me up to his level. Some of the things I've been talking about, you know, all boats float in a high tide, or however that saying goes. I don't know. I'm not a boatman. I don't sail a sailboat or steam a steamboat or U a U-boat. So, row a rowboat or sink a sink boat, I don't dinghy boat a dinghy. I have no idea what I'm saying now. I don't swim with the fishes. I do eat fishes, but not while I'm swimming because that's delicious. Or maybe suspicious. So what I'm saying is this is my coverage of Legendary Drops and why everybody is mad at Xbox. I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, I encourage you all, drop in and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell for notifications. Leave a comment. Maybe even get it commented on back. Get some conversation going on this. And of course, a thumbs up. Always appreciated. Most of all, I just appreciate your views. Thank you all so much. And from Mist Valley Entertainment News, my name is Dread. Later.